All right, we're here with our judge, John Creuzot. How you doing?
I'm well, thank
All
you.
right.
Good morning.
Good morning. Uh, our Dallas District Attorney elect.
Yes,
All right, who's set to go into action around the 1st of January or so. Is that correct?
January 1 will be sworn in. January 2nd, of course, January 1's a holiday, so January 2nd is when you get to work.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
The people's judge, if you will. I've coined that phrase, so yeah. I call him the people's judge because, in my experience and just being with him throughout the campaign stomp, if you will,
Yeah.
everywhere we went, it was a person saying, "Oh, the judge, he helped me. You know, it was years ago I was dealing
Yeah.
with drugs, or I was, I was facing time, or, et cetera, et cetera. And, he helped get me off." And it was organic. These
Yes.
were just people that we came across,
Yes.
in the field, in the streets, if you will. Speak on your approach, to criminal justice and, not just looking at people and saying, "Oh, all right, well, you did something, you're going to jail," of course, but also making it an environment where people can walk the streets safely as well. Speak on that a little bit.
Well, so what we have in America, and it's the same thing in Dallas County, is that we have over-incarceration of individuals. It may be a low-level crime. It may be the result of their inability to pay fines and fees. And the system's response traditionally has been to adjudicate them, give them some type of a conviction and maybe jail time, or maybe so far as prison time. And what has happened is if we have handicapped people from their ability to go on in life for some reason that has nothing to do with public safety. So what we're going to do is kind of reorganize the culture of the district attorney's office. And we have some things that we can do right away, and then we have some things that we have to plan out. But we're going to take a hard look at the cases that we prosecute and whether it's necessary to prosecute them to create public safety. If there's no connection between the low-level offense and public safety, then it's likely either we'll not prosecute the case or we will put them on a pre-charge diversion program. So if they have underlying issues or problems, we can have those addressed, but we can still dismiss the case and they can go on without a criminal conviction or a criminal record for the rest of their lives.
Wow. Okay, that's very robust. So forgive me if the next couple of questions are going to kind of be rooted in what you just said. 'Cause
Sure.
what you just said is so robust, and
Yep.
we got to delve into it just a little bit. The Dallas area is familiar with, your work in the last almost 30 years. Has it been,
Well over 30.
Little over 30. Little over 30. In regards to this approach to criminal justice, the drug
Yes.
courts, the things of that nature, the rehabilitation.
Well, so
courts,
let's
things
just
of that
stop there.
nature. Okay.
That was a perfect example.
All right.
So we took felony grade offenses, drug cases and state jail cases, which is up to 2 years in a state jail. We took third-degree felonies, which is up to 10 years in the penitentiary. And they were usually drug cases, but they could be prescription fraud cases, which obviously someone has an opioid likely problem, and they're walking around, they're stealing prescription pads or altering the prescription. And what we did was we put them through 12 to 18 months of rehabilitation with close supervision. The better they did, the less the supervision. And they graduated, their case was dismissed, and it was expunged from their record. So they had an opportunity to go on without suffering the consequences of this arrest and a conviction. Excuse me. So if we did that with those level of offenses, why can't we do that in the general population of those same types of cases? So we have thousands of cases like that that come through that if you don't fit in the qualifications of a 150-person program, then you get a criminal record. You wind up with one. Okay, that's the resolution. So what we want to do is to be thoughtful about, shouldn't we treat all these other people the same way that we treat that group of people? Because they're going to wind up with a criminal record. Let's talk about marijuana.
Yes, let's talk about it.
Misdemeanor marijuana. Okay. The reality of it is that the vast majority of the states either have legal marijuana or have legalized marijuana in some shape, form, or fashion. Even this summer in Oklahoma, it's now legal through a prescription, and I'm not even sure you have to have an ailment, but you can get a prescription, so to speak, for up to 3 ounces of marijuana. You can have up to 10 plants and other forms of THC that are felony grade offenses in the state of Texas, but it's now become legal in the state of Oklahoma. And the citizens voted on that, and it was a 56% approval rate. There's another state, I can't remember which one, I think it may be Massachusetts, where you can now keep 10 ounces of marijuana at home and legally, and you can carry a certain lesser amount with you out on the streets. So the reality of it is that we're coming to understand that, number one, marijuana is not the dangerous drug that it has been said to be. And number two, there's no connection between or nexus between marijuana and violent crime. And even though Texas laws are not there yet, there's lots of talk in this upcoming legislature, not necessarily decriminalization, but reducing the penalties. So what we're trying to do is to get ahead of the game and to have proactive prosecution to not encumber individuals with a criminal record. And so that's called being smart on crime. We'll save money, and we'll keep, especially people of color and poor people, from having a criminal record, like I said, that will encumber them or impair them for the rest of their lives.
All right, let's look at those outside of our community who, or with an idea outside of our community, who might say, I mean, those people, you know, are criminals, and how can you be, you know, soft on those people, and, you know, we need someone harder on crime, and, you know, for those people, if you will, you know, that idea that is permeated throughout Texas, if you will, in some communities and some, you know, lawmakers. What do you say to those people?
Well, first of all, the lawmakers are the ones that are having the ideas of reducing the penalties for these offenses. That's number one. And that's a bipartisan, that is a Republican and Democratic effort to change the laws on possession of marijuana and things like that. Okay, that's number one. Number two, when you poll just Republicans, 71% or more agree with this approach. Democrats even more so, up into the 80s, okay? The other thing is, as a practical matter, in most of our Texas counties today, misdemeanor marijuana is treated with as a conditional dismissal, which means there's a contract between the person and the district attorney's office that if they do certain things, most often they want to take samples of urine to make sure you're clean. They may give you community service. They may give you a fee or fine to pay, okay? And the case is dismissed. I even had one recently where the case was dismissed after my client bought 12 cans of food and donated those cans of food to the North Texas Food Bank, and we gave the receipt to the prosecutor. This is all within 5 days, and the case was dismissed. And that case will eventually be expunged from his record. So the reality of it is we're not really prosecuting those cases in the traditional sense right now. But we are spending time and effort on those cases that's maybe not necessary when we can focus on other more important cases.
And that time and effort translates to taxpayers' money.
Taxpayer money, yes.
Definitely. Wow. In looking at that, will this be, from your perspective, one of the most revolutionary, or, you know, one of the most, I guess we can use that word, from a perspective of crime, the way that the DA's office will be handling things?
Well, that is revolutionary and new for the Dallas County District Attorney, but there are other things when we talk about treating the lower level drug cases the same way as we do in a diversion court. It won't be that we'll just dismiss them, but people will have to show that they're clean and they're sober. They may need some level of treatment, they may not, but they'll be given an opportunity to show that that they're clean okay? For example, somebody picks up a methamphetamine case. That case is eligible to go into divert court, but they may or may not. They may be carrying in somebody else's drugs. They may have a problem that doesn't really need full inpatient treatment. They may need outpatient treatment, or they may need something a little less than that. They may have some type of psychological underlying condition that needs to be addressed. So what we want to do is give them an opportunity to address these underlying issues so we can solve the underlying problem, and then we can go ahead and dismiss the case and give them an opportunity to have their case expunged also.
Definitely. Wow. Wow. All right, let's look at something that since September that we've been talking about, that's been all over the national news, of course, and with Dallas on the spotlight, the case of Botham Shamjan. As we seen recently, Amber Geiger, was now indicted on the murder charge, if you will, per current DA, who's Faith Johnson. What are your thoughts on how this will, how the case will shape up, if you will, and making sure that that charge of murder is put forth, and she goes to jail for that?
Well, there's no
take on it?
There's no guarantee that someone will be convicted, and I think we need to be honest and realize, and we need to follow the law and understand the Constitution and apply it as well as everybody else. Number one, she's presumed innocent. Okay, that's number one. So there's some issues that are not in dispute in this case. Who shot who? She shot him. So it's not a question of identity. It's just a question of circumstances. What were the circumstances? And as you know, that I have been quite clear that I thought that manslaughter was not an appropriate charge. Murder was the appropriate charge. Whatever was presented to the grand jury, they obviously felt that way. But there's also the issues of defenses that she has that are significant in this case, as I understand it to be. I really haven't seen any case files. I haven't done any of that. But she has mistake of fact, which is if she's believed and if it's reasonable, being in the wrong apartment. And then once that happens, then other defenses kick in, if she's even granted that by the jury, okay? And so if that occurs, then you have self-defense, you have defense of property at nighttime, which unfortunately in Texas law you can use deadly force, okay? You have the concept of apparent danger, and I think people don't understand in self-defense cases that if it reasonably appears to you that your life was threatened or that you were in danger, you can use deadly force if you thought you needed to, if it was reasonable, but it's taken from the standpoint of the person who uses the deadly force. And I anticipate, just, practiced criminal law for 36 years, and I was a judge for 22. And so, my anticipation is that these will be issues that will be brought up in the case, and the jury will have to decide them. How they will decide them, I have no idea.
Yes.
But she deserves as fair a trial as anyone else.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
All right. And do you feel that there's a little bit more ease from the community right now, that, a community nationally and definitely here, there was more of an uproar as, a lot of questions were not being answered?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, that's why I wrote the piece back in September. When all the manslaughter and the anger about it, it seemed to me that somebody needed to take responsibility for explaining what the law of murder is. It has two different aspects to it, and what the law of manslaughter is. And based on the reporting in the newspaper, it did not appear to me, and not only that, but the probable cause affidavit that was issued by the Texas Rangers, it did not appear to me that there was any justification to charge her merely with manslaughter. I couldn't see the facts that justified that. That didn't mean that there weren't other facts there that may have justified it, but they weren't made known. And so that's why I wrote the piece. But I included in the piece, as you know, all of the defenses. And I think the community needs to know and understand what those are. And she's entitled to them just like anybody else. And I anticipate that those will be brought up in trial. Once again, I don't know how it'll come out. I long ago stopped predicting the outcome of cases because you never know. And so, but I think that's how that case will play out. I think those will be the issues, and what the jury will decide, I wouldn't have any idea about that.
Right, totally. What do you feel like your biggest challenge will be as you step into the shoes of District Attorney of Dallas County?
Oh, I think there's several. I think number one, getting a grip on just the size of the office and the budget and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
If you look back on Dallas County history, everybody in recent years who's been the Dallas County District Attorney has either been a judge or a solo practitioner in criminal law.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't deal with 400 people, and we don't deal with $45 million budgets. So getting my head wrapped around that, I'm getting there, I'm working on it, and fortunately there are good people to help me do that. The most important thing beyond that is changing the culture of the office, okay, to a more open, a more transparent, and a more progressive policy office, and looking at really who's going to prison, why they're going, if they need to go, because that's where you impact mass incarceration, okay? Taking low-level marijuana offenders, we're only talking about the county jail and just X numbers of people. But we really need to look at policies that impact who's going to prison and whether it is necessary to send them to prison. So some of the policies, for example, we know from research that a person will violate their probation, if they do, within a relatively short period of time, 2 to 3 years, okay? Yet people are put on probation for 10 years. There's no necessity to do that in most of the cases. So we'll have a presumption that the longest felony probation will be 5 years. It doesn't mean that there won't be people on probation for 10 years. It doesn't mean that the judge can't extend it to 10 years, but as a matter of policy, we will not be asking for that. Presumptively, we will not. Same thing on misdemeanor offenses. Misdemeanor offenses, people usually can get done what they need to do in 180 days, okay? Yet oftentimes people are put on probation for 2 years. There's no need for that.
Wow.
And so what we'll do,
taxpayer money,
more
time.
taxpayer money, more time.
Affecting of citizens.
Right. It's longer that they have a criminal record. If they get a deferred adjudication, which means that they're on probation but they're not convicted, they have a right to have that removed from the public database, but you have to wait 2 years after you're off probation. So if we can shorten that period of time by shortening the length of probation, it gives a person an opportunity to move on in life and once again not be impaired or encumbered by a criminal record. So there are lots of things that we can do to make adjustments. We don't need to change the laws to make adjustments that are beneficial to our community.
What do you feel? What do you feel like the biggest? I don't want to say the biggest, but some of the biggest or more horrific crimes that affect the citizens of Dallas right now. And, what are your thoughts on that as far as how your office relates to that?
Well, violent crime, regardless who is perpetrated by, obviously affects public safety.
Definitely.
It affects individuals and their families. It affects the families of the person who's accused also. And so we have to have some innovative efforts to be proactive on violent crime. I was recently in a training last week and was introduced to a program by some individuals who have started it in one city and trying to export it to other cities, where we're going to our youth who we know or suspect are likely to have guns. And they've put together some really good, effective programs to get them to give up the guns and give up the gun lifestyle and all that goes with it. And violent crime has gone down as a result of those efforts. So those are some of the things that we're going to take a look at so we can be proactive. If we have too many people who are robbed at gunpoint, shot and killed, and if we can be proactive on that by communicating to these individuals and changing their thought patterns and their lives, changing the location where they live. These are some of the techniques, and putting them through programs that help them think differently about themselves and their relationship to the community and community safety. We can likely bring down violent crime in Dallas County. And so those are the types of things that are out there that we will be looking at to bring into our community so that people don't wind up down at the courthouse with a violent crime.
Definitely. Okay. What does the judge do on his leisure time? What does our next DA do on his leisure time to try to, I guess, circumvent the many things that you have to do,
right,
within your job description?
Well, right now I don't have a lot of leisure time getting ready, and I haven't had any for a long time because I've, been campaigning and now trying to transition. I've had to get cases closed out, and now I'm having to get focused on getting into the district attorney's office. But, do some exercise and ride my bicycle when I get a chance. I do some reading. Netflix has a lot of interesting movies on it, and different series, whether they're in English or some other foreign language. They seem to do a good job and catch some of that, but trying to catch up on reading. And right now, I'm just kind of inundated with stuff that's given to me by other groups. I'm going through a lot of trainings right now. In fact, I have one next week that's a one-day training that just has to do with nothing but county government, which I need to learn, how county government in Texas works. And so right now, there's not a lot of leisure.
Get back to the job description. Let's get back to the leisure.
Yeah. There's a lot of things going on right now that there's not a lot of leisure time. But in the past, I've been a runner, and I used to run marathons and was on a running team and all that stuff. And I've had some neck issues that have kind of impacted that, and some knee issues. So, but I need to get back. I've actually kind of changed my diet in the last 2 or 3 months, and actually lost a bunch of weight just by changing my diet.
Okay, definitely.
And so that worked out well.
That, what top 5 places in Dallas where you might find some food? We know it's a lot of restaurants here. Top 5, perhaps, maybe that you might think about where you might get some food.
I go to Elaine's every once in a while when I'm not eating very healthy.
Okay, we all know Elaine's in South Dallas. All
right. That's one place.
Give us a couple of more.
There's a place on Henderson Avenue that I go and get salads. It's called Louis'. There's another place by my house where I can eat healthy. I can eat a turkey burger. It's called Good Friends. But to be honest with you, I cook a lot myself.
All right.
And I try to cook healthy things like chicken and fish. And to be honest with you, in fact, I was in a hurry this morning. I usually eat a banana in the morning, and I didn't do that today, but I drink protein drinks for lunch, and that seems to get me by until I can eat something healthy at night. And so I do some amount of cooking at home, so I can eat at home.
Out, so it's Elaine's, Louis', or
Elaine's, Louis', Good Friends. There's a place actually not far from here that I have lunch when I have, lunch meetings. It's called Paul Martin's, and so they have a pretty healthy diet over there. I can get a vegetable burger and not eat the bread. So I get that. I don't get French fries. I get a salad. And so it's easy for me to have meetings over there. It's easy for everybody else to get to. It's not crowded. You don't need a reservation, and it's not noisy. So I can actually have a meeting and get something done and get back to work and do whatever I need to do.
You got Elaine's, Louis', Good Friends, Paul
Martin's. That's about it. That's about it. I may drop in somewhere because somebody wants to, but as far as kind of the places I go, that's kind of it.
And last thing, what's in the what is the judge listening to right now? What is our next district attorney listening to if he's driving down the street leisurely? NPR? What music?
Not much NPR. I listen to a little ESPN. Depending on I have one car that has satellite radio, so I can turn into ESPN. But also kind of 60s music. Whether it's soul music or rock, I kind of listen to that. I kind of choose those stations. every
All right, so
once in a
anything
while.
From the Doors to the Temptations.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of Motown.
All right,
You know, it's mixed in, so the stations
sir.
will mix that stuff
Right,
in.
right.
So I listen to a lot of that.
All right, we
yeah.
thank you for your time.
All right, well, thank
All right,
you.
it's Judge John Creuzot, our next District Attorney of Dallas County. Thank you for sitting down with the Dallas Week.
Oh, thank you.
Really appreciate you.
I appreciate
the
you.
People's Judge. All right.
Appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.